So I like to start my presentation with something relatable. Who here watched The Office? Nobody? Nobody watched The Office? Okay, it's a couple. Everybody watches The Office, right? All right. So those of you who came early got a little preview, but we have, Dwight and the boss here. So here's a little film that embodies, security. I don't know if you knew that was a priority for them, but cybersecurity was a big priority in the office. And now we're going to learn some critical.
Thank you. We're going to let everyone walk behind me. 7 out of 10 attacks are from the rear.
Okay, well, that still leaves a 30% chance that I'll attack you from the front.
Yeah, but it'll be easier to stop. I can always block the blow. I can counter it.
I love that part. Okay. I hope you've all learned a valuable lesson. Okay. All right, now, privacy legal requirements. So just to warn you, a little later in our presentation, we're going to have a little mock audit. I'm going to ask some of you from the audience to come and do some assessments of some live cases, so just be prepared. So privacy legal requirements, a topic I could discuss for ages and ages. But to try to squeeze it all into 10 minutes and give you some valuable information, we're going to talk about global or international privacy legal requirements, domestic United States requirements, and in the domestic United States requirements, we're going to break it down into constitutional, statutory, which of course includes federal, state, and other laws, and then there's a contractual aspect to that too. Now let me ask, how many of you are from outside the United States? Any? 1, 2? Quite a few. Okay. Inside the United States? That should be everybody. I have quite a few from outside the United States. And how many of you are from inside the U.S. but work for organizations that are subject to international privacy laws? And some additional ones, even so. So global privacy laws are more and more influential, sort of throughout the world. And so even if you work for a domestic corporation or you're in the United States, there's still a need to know and understand global privacy laws. And most of you are probably aware that there are a number of international privacy laws. So if your company is under the impression that it only needs domestic legal assistance in this area, then you might be prepared to go back and correct them that they definitely need international legal assistance as well. So we'll come to global laws at the end in just a couple of minutes. In talking about United States laws, we'll start with the federal laws. And I've listed here just a few of the areas where there are laws. So Rebecca and I, our presentation is a bit like a funnel because laws are a vast domain. And it's very hard to master all the laws that might pertain. And the value of a privacy impact assessment that Rebecca's going to talk about is because, like business impact assessment, it allows you to narrow the focus to what's pertinent to you. What are your privacy risks in your organization? Once you do that, you're going to be able to go back and figure out better what privacy laws apply to you. So, for example, there are privacy laws in the healthcare area. Most of us are very familiar with them. But there are also financial privacy laws. Privacy laws relating to communications. Entirely different laws relating to online activities privacy. There's privacy in the home, yet a different topic, with more laws relating to that. Employee and labor laws, education laws, and governmental laws. So there's a vast domain of laws that fall into virtually every category. Here is a sample of some of the laws I've incorporated. One of the cornerstones of privacy in the United States legally is the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Now, does anybody know which amendments might govern privacy rights in the United States? Anybody? Any guesses? Yes and wrong, I believe. Exactly. All right. Well, we're going to go through that. But just so you know, most people are familiar with the fact that there is no explicitly stated right to privacy in the United States. Some people may or may not be familiar. There is no law, that explicitly provides a right to privacy. However, the right to privacy has been found to be grounded in the Constitution in a number of amendments. Most often cited are the Fourth Amendment that governs search and seizure, often in the home, but also related to many other areas. There's the 14th Amendment that governs due process. And there's also the Ninth Amendment, which covers rights not explicitly stated elsewhere. And justices have found underpinnings of privacy in other constitutional amendments. There's a vast body of United States case law, starting with Olmstead and following up with Katz and Griswold in the 1960s, that establishes what we understand as our current modern-day right to privacy in the United States. And those are the underpinnings of virtually every one of these laws that we see here. I'm not going to read through all the laws. I'm sure you wish I would, but just to mention a few here. So the privacy in the home I've listed as related to the amendment. A number of attendees here are in the financial services area, and so I'm sure you're familiar with Graham-Leach-Bliley, and that has a number of privacy requirements. Fair and Accurate Credit Transactions Act, FACTA, is something that's a little bit less widely known, and the Red Flags Rule, which is an FTC rule relating to identity theft. And remember, these are just a sample of laws that govern. Let's see, in the communications area, the First Amendment governs this, actually. So it's another area of the Bill of Rights that has been found to lie under the right to privacy. The ACPA, Electronic Communications Privacy Act, which is often called the Wiretap Act, and there's another act that's also referred to as the Wiretap Act, confusingly, or the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. So hopefully when you go home with these slides, you'll have a reference, but also understand that this is just a sample. This is really an area where your lawyers and your clients need to be involved in advising you. And finally, we come to global. Well, just to touch on the last area in the United States, of course, there's state privacy laws, and currently there are, depending on how you count, 46 of the 50 states have state privacy laws. However, we now have recently introduced the Online Consumer Bill of Rights, which is following a White House task force that's had a number of studies released, but most recently, last week, just released a first draft of that law. So that's hot breaking news that you may want to be aware of, that this law explicitly, under Section 4, preempts all the state laws. It hasn't been passed yet, it's still under discussion. If it is passed, in its current state, it will preempt all state privacy laws. However, there are a few notable exceptions to that. For example, data breach provisions still remain in force. And finally, contractual, there's a lot of civil liability, obviously, in data breaches. So the risk of data breaches for your company obviously have to do with fines, but the greater financial exposure is based on civil liability, and that's based on contractual law, which is different from the state and federal law. Finally, in the global area, there's again just a multiplicity of laws and a patchwork of overlapping laws, and there are even, to make it even more confusing, the area of privacy law is, the same type of privacy law is usually applied to laws related to surveillance. So generally laws legalizing surveillance globally or requiring it are typically called privacy laws, even though they're actually about removing privacy. Some privacy laws that people are more familiar with is the European Data Protection Directive. Is there anybody here that's ever had to deal with a situation where the European Data Privacy Directive pertains to them? Okay. And what type of data do you collect in your organization? They tell you they did that. Of course, the problem with the law is it's always evolving, just like technology. This law, the European Data Protection Directive, was found to be illegal. A year ago, it was overruled by the United Nations Court, or the European Parliament Court of Human Rights. It was found to violate two of the provisions of the Charter of Human Rights. So when that happened a year ago, everybody assumed that it would then, that pertains to the Data Retention Directive, a frequently confused directive. It's called the European Data Retention Directive. So the Data Protection Directive was not repealed, but a subsequent directive called the European Data Retention Directive was in US, all of the member states of the European Union have continued to keep their data retention laws on the books despite that ruling. So I'm going to wrap up there. Turn back over to you.